The great chamber of the unified Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. Its walls were made of living crystal that hummed with ancient energy. 17 elder species had built this place together, and from here they ruled everything that moved between the stars. Every war had been stopped by their word. Every new species had bowed before their wisdom. They believed nothing could surprise them anymore. They were wrong. Ambassador Zelthos moved across the polished floor, his body made of pure blue crystal that caught the light from 1,000 floating orbs. He was old, even by Valorian standards, and he had seen many strange things in his long life. But nothing had prepared him for the message he carried today. "Honored members of the Council," he said, his voice echoing through the vast space. "I bring news that will change everything we know." 17 representatives leaned forward in their seats. Some were made of flesh and blood. Others were creatures of energy or living stone. The Chthoni representative was a massive being covered in thick armor plates, standing 3 times the height of a human. The Silthene were snake-like creatures with scales that shifted color with their moods. Each species had earned its place here through millions of years of careful growth. Counselor Methia the Silthene raised her head, her ancient eyes narrowing. "Speak, Ambassador. What could be so important?" Zelthos took a deep breath. "The quarantine barrier around the Sol system has been broken. The humans have escaped." For a long moment no one spoke. Then the chamber exploded into chaos. The Chthoni representative, whose name was Veth, slammed his massive fist against his seat. Impossible. The barrier was built to last 10,000 years. It was designed to contain primitive species. "The humans were primitive when we sealed them," Rethi hissed. "They had barely learned to fly through their own atmosphere. How could they possibly breach a barrier built by our greatest scientists?" Zelthos waited for the noise to die down before he continued. "They did not breach it, Counselor. They went around it. Somehow, in just 300 of their years, they have developed fold space travel." This time the silence lasted much longer. Fold space travel was the most advanced form of movement through the universe. It allowed ships to step outside of normal space and reappear somewhere else entirely. The combined species of the Council had taken 4,000 years to understand this technology, and only after finding ancient ruins left behind by species that came before them, the humans had figured it out on their own. In 3 centuries, deep in the archives beneath the Council chamber, there were records that explained why humanity had been locked away. 300 years ago, a Valorian survey ship had discovered Earth during a routine mission. The planet was busy with life, and one species had risen above the others. They called themselves humans. At first, the Council had been interested. Humans were social creatures who built cities and formed bonds with each other. They had art and music and dreams of reaching the stars. Many Council members thought they might make good additions to galactic society someday. Then the psychological studies came back. The scientists who studied humanity found something that terrified them. Humans did not accept limits. When they faced a wall, they did not turn back or find peace with their situation. They climbed the wall, or broke through it, or dug beneath it. When told something was impossible, they simply worked harder until they proved everyone wrong. The Valorians had taken 40,000 years to develop their first, faster-than-light engines. Their culture was patient and careful, testing every step 1,000 times before moving forward. The humans had already begun writing theories about breaking the speed of light within decades of discovering basic physics. They had not even left their own planet yet, and already they were dreaming of the stars. The Silthene had spent millennia changing their own bodies to survive on new worlds. They were masters of genetic science, slowly shaping themselves to fit different environments. The humans simply built machines and protective suits, refusing to wait for evolution to catch up with their ambitions. Every species in the Council had a story like this. They had all grown slowly, carefully, over millions of years. Humanity was something different. Humanity was fast. Humanity was hungry. Humanity was dangerous. The vote to quarantine Earth had been unanimous. A barrier of folded space was placed around their entire solar system, invisible and unbreakable. The humans would be allowed to grow on their own, watched from a safe distance. Most council members expected them to destroy themselves within a few centuries. Their history was full of wars and violence after all. Surely they would turn their weapons on each other until nothing remained. But the humans had not destroyed themselves. Instead, they had looked up at the stars and wondered why they could not reach them. They had sent ships to the edge of their solar system and found a wall they could not pass. And rather than giving up, they had spent 300 years finding another way. Captain Samuel Price stood on the bridge of the starship Horizon, looking out at stars that no human had ever seen with their own eyes. He was 42 years old, with gray appearing at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of squinting at screens and star charts. He had been born knowing two things: humanity was not alone in the universe, and the universe had decided humanity was not welcome. His crew of 42 men and women worked at stations around him, monitoring systems and checking readings. They were the best Earth had to offer, chosen from millions of volunteers for this mission. They were the first humans to leave their solar system, the first to prove that the cage could not hold them. "Captain," said Katie Morrison, his navigation officer. She was young, barely 25, with quick eyes and quicker fingers on her controls. "We are being hailed. I am counting 17 different communication frequencies, 17 different languages." Samuel felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his face calm. This was the moment everything changed. 300 years of work, of struggle, of refusing to accept their prison, all leading to this single point in time. "Can you translate any of it?" he asked. Katie nodded, her fingers dancing across her console. "The computer is working on it now." Most of them seemed to be asking the same question. "They want to know who we are and how we got here." Samuel allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had spent 3 centuries wondering about the beings who had locked them away. Now those beings were wondering about humanity. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies. Let them hear us in every language we can manage." He straightened his uniform and faced the main screen, knowing that whatever he said next would be remembered for all of history. "This is Captain Samuel Price of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come from the Sol system, which you have kept sealed for 300 years. We do not come with anger, though we have reason for it. We do not come with weapons raised, though we are prepared to defend ourselves. We come with a simple message. We are here. We are free. And we would very much like to talk." The message went out into the void, carried on 17 frequencies to 17 different species, who had thought humanity would never reach them in the council chamber. The representatives listened to the human captain's words and felt something they had not experienced in thousands of years. They felt afraid. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted for 6 standard days. No one slept. No one left the chamber except to eat or relieve themselves. The matter was too important, too frightening, to allow any delay. Representatives argued with each other in loud voices. Scientists were called to explain how this could have happened. Military commanders were asked how quickly they could gather their fleets. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone believed their opinion was the only correct one. Counselor Veth of the Krathany Dominion was the loudest of them all. His species had built their civilization on strength and power. They respected force above all things, and they did not like being surprised. "Our scientists told us the barrier would hold for 10,000 years, he roared, his voice shaking the crystal walls. "They told us the humans would destroy themselves long before they could threaten us. Now we learn that everything we believed was wrong." How did this happen? Christos, the chief scientist who had helped design the quarantine barrier, stepped forward nervously. He was a Valorian-like ambassador, Zelthos, but much younger and far less confident. His crystal body flickered with anxiety as he projected data into the center of the chamber. "The barrier works by folding space around the target system," he explained. "Any ship trying to leave is simply redirected back to where it started. The technology is sound. It has worked perfectly for 300 years. "Then how did they escape?" Rethi demanded. Christos swallowed hard. "They did not escape through the barrier. They went around it entirely. The barrier exists in normal spacetime. The humans have developed a method of travel that bypasses space-time completely. They step outside of our universe and step back in wherever they wish. The chamber fell silent. Christos continued, his voice barely above a whisper. They invented fold space travel. On their own, in 300 years. It took our combined species 4,000 years to understand this technology. We only managed it by studying ruins left behind by ancient civilizations. The humans had no ruins. They had no teach. They simply figured it out themselves. Ambassador Zelthos stepped forward into the heavy silence. I have made contact with their vessel. Their captain has asked for a formal meeting with the council. He wishes to discuss ... integration. Mrethi laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. We sealed them away specifically to prevent this. They advanced too quickly. They changed too fast. If we allow them into galactic society, they will take it over within a few generations. Every model we have shows the same result. Then we refuse, Veth said simply. We tell them no. We destroy their ship if we must, and make the barrier stronger. Make it stronger how? Christos asked quietly. If they have already moved beyond our barrier technology, what else have they moved beyond? We have no idea what other advances they have made. We have no idea what weapons they might carry. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years by being careful and patient. They studied problems from every angle before acting. They considered every possibility before making decisions. This approach had kept them safe and powerful for longer than most species had existed. But now, they faced something their careful planning had never anticipated. They faced a species that did not play by the rules. On the horizon, Captain Samuel Price sat in his ready room with his senior officers. Dr. Nathan Cole, the ship's chief scientist, had spent the last 3 days analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the Council and its member species. Diana Shaw, the security chief, had been reviewing tactical information and preparing for every possible outcome. Their weapons are impressive, Nathan said, pointing to data on the screen before them. Plasma-based systems with excellent accuracy. Their ships are faster than ours in normal space, and they have more of them. Much more. We have 60 vessels in our fleet. They have thousands. Diana frowned at the numbers. So if it comes to a fight, we lose. In a direct battle, yes. But look at this. Nathan changed the display. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons. They have nothing that can handle kinetic impacts. Our railguns would punch right through them. And our full drives can take us anywhere we want to go. They cannot catch us if we do not wish to be caught. Samuel studied the data carefully. What about their society? Their politics? Nathan pulled up another file. This is where it gets interesting. The Council has 17 member species, but they are not equal. 7 of them are what they call elder races. They make most of the decisions. The other 10 are junior members, brought into the Council after they proved they were not a threat. They follow orders more than they give them, so there might be cracks we can exploit, Diana said thoughtfully. The junior members might not be happy with how things work. Perhaps, but that is a long game to play. Samuel stood and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. We did not come here to start a war or to tear their society apart. We came here because humanity deserves to be free. We spent 300 years in a cage and now we are out. I will not put us back in another cage, even one of our own making. He turned back to face his officers. The Council is afraid of us. They have been afraid since the day they first found Earth. Everything they have done has been driven by that fear. If we want to change our situation, we need to show them that their fear is misguided. Katie Morrison's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we are receiving a message from the Council. They have agreed to meet with us. They are sending coordinates for a neutral location. Samuel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. A meeting was better than a battle. It was a chance to talk, to explain, to find a path forward that did not end in blood. Tell them we will be there, he said. And Katie, tell them we are bringing a gift. A gift, sir. Samuel smiled. They think they know what humans are. They have spent 300 years watching us from a distance. building their models and making their predictions. They think we are violent and dangerous and unable to control ourselves. We are going to show them everything they have missed. We are going to show them what humanity really is. The message went out, and the horizon changed course for the meeting point. Behind them, 11 more human ships emerged from fold space. Each one a testament to 3 centuries of determination and genius. The Council had built their barrier to contain a threat. Instead, they had created a challenge. And humanity had always risen to meet its challenges. The elder races had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years by being careful and slow. They were about to learn what happened when they faced a species that believed slow was just another word for giving up. The meeting place was an old space station at the edge of Council territory. It had once been a busy trading post, where merchants from dozens of worlds came to buy and sell goods. Now it floated alone in the darkness, empty and quiet. It's chosen because it belonged to no one and threatened no one. The Council sent 7 representatives, one from each of the elder races. They arrived in a massive ship, covered in weapons and shields, surrounded by an escort of 50 smaller vessels. They wanted the humans to understand their power. Captain Samuel Price brought only 3 people, himself, Dr. Nathan Cole and Lieutenant Commander Diana Shaw. They came in a single shuttle, small and unarmed. They wanted the Council to understand something very different. The meeting room was circular, with seats arranged in a ring around a central platform. The Council representatives sat on one side, their various forms a strange collection of crystals and scales and armored plates. The 3 humans sat on the other side, looking small and fragile by comparison. A Silthine named Strix opened the discussion. She was ancient, her scales faded to pale gray, but her eyes were still sharp, and her voice was still strong. "You should not exist," she said, staring directly at Samuel. "Your species should have destroyed itself by now. We have run 17 different projections of your development. Every single one ended with your extinction within 2 centuries of discovering nuclear weapons." Diana Shaw spoke before Samuel could respond. Her hand rested near her sidearm out of habit, though she knew weapons would not solve this problem. "Your projections were wrong," she said flatly. "Maybe you should have updated them more often," Strix hissed softly. "We did update them. 17 times. Each new projection reached the same conclusion. Your species is too aggressive. Your governments are too divided. Your emotions are too unstable. By every measure we use to evaluate developing species, you should be dead." Dr. Nathan Cole leaned forward, his scientific mind already working on the puzzle. "What species did you use as a baseline for these projections? Who did you compare us to?" The Valorian representative answered. His name was Velthus, and unlike Zelthus, he had opposed humanity's release from the very beginning. "Successful spacefaring species share certain traits," he said. "They develop unified governments before they reach industrial capability. They maintain genetic stability through careful breeding programs. They control their emotional responses through evolution or technology. Your species has none of these traits. You are chaos given form." "And yet here we are," Samuel said quietly. 14 billion of us on Earth alone, with colonies on 4 other worlds in our system. 60 ships capable of traveling anywhere in the galaxy. All built in 300 years while you kept us trapped in a cage we did not deserve. "The quarantine was for your protection," the Chthoni representative growled. "Your history is nothing but an endless cycle of war. You kill each other over land, over resources, over ideas. We prevented you from spreading that violence to the rest of the galaxy." Diana laughed, but there was pain in the sound, not amusement. "You prevented nothing," she said. "You just made sure we could only hurt ourselves. Do you have any idea what happened on Earth while you watched from your safe distance? We had wars that killed millions. We had famines that starved entire nations. We created diseases in laboratories and then struggled to contain them. We did all of this to ourselves, and through all of it, we kept reaching for the stars." She stood up, unable to contain her emotions any longer. "We did not know you had locked us in. We just knew the door would not open no matter how hard we pushed. So we spent 300 years building a window instead. Every time we failed, we tried again. Every time someone said it was impossible, we found someone stubborn enough to prove them wrong. That is what humans do. We do not accept limits. We do not surrender. We do not give up. Samuel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and Diana sat back down. She was breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists, but she stayed silent. "What my officer means," Samuel said calmly, "is that we understand your fear. We have read the observation reports your monitoring posts sent back. We know what you see when you look at us. You see a species that fights and kills and cannot seem to stop, but you are making the same mistake every enemy in our history has made." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. "You assume that because we fight, we cannot also love. Because we compete, we cannot also cooperate. Because we fear, we cannot also hope. You have watched us for 300 years and somehow missed the most important thing about humanity. We do not fight because we enjoy destruction. We fight because we care about things so deeply that we will die to protect them." The Valorian Velthus made a dismissive gesture. "Pretty words. But words do not change reality. What happens if we maintain the ban? What happens if we refuse to accept your presence in our space?" Samuel held his gaze steadily. "Then we will do what humans have always done when faced with a closed door. We will keep knocking until you open it, or until we find another way through. You cannot quarantine us anymore. The only question left is whether we become partners or problems." The representatives exchanged glances. This was not the response they had expected. They had prepared for threats and demands. They had prepared for violence and anger. They had not prepared for calm determination and quiet confidence. Nathan Cole spoke up. "May I share something with the council?" "A gift, as my captain mentioned." Strix nodded cautiously. Nathan activated a small projector he had brought with him. Images filled the air above the central platform. Pictures of Earth, not the wars and violence the council had focused on, but the other things. Children laughing in playgrounds. Artists creating beauty from nothing. Scientists working together across national boundaries to solve problems. Doctors treating patients regardless of where they came from. Ordinary people helping strangers in need. "This is also humanity," Nathan said. "The same species that makes war also makes music. The same species that builds weapons also builds hospitals. The same species that sometimes hates also loves more fiercely than anything you have ever encountered. You cannot separate one from the other. They are both part of who we are." The images continued to play as the representatives watched in silence. They showed human history, the full picture, rather than the selected pieces the council had used to justify the quarantine. Yes, there was war, but there was also peace. Yes, there was cruelty, but there was also kindness. Yes, there was fear, but there was also courage. The council had spent 3 centuries studying humanity from a distance, looking for reasons to keep them locked away. They had found plenty of reasons, but they had missed something important. They had missed hope. Samuel stood and bowed slightly to the representatives. "We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves. Let us show you what humanity can be when we are not fighting for survival. Let us show you what we can build when we are not trapped behind walls we did not choose." The meeting ended with no decision reached. The representatives returned to their ships to consult with their governments. But something had changed. A seed of doubt had been planted in minds that had been certain for 300 years. Humanity had asked for a chance. Now they would have to wait and see if the galaxy would give them one, the full galactic. Council had not gathered in one place for 400 years. The last time had been to decide the fate of a dying star that threatened 3 inhabited systems. The time before that had been to end a war that had lasted for 10,000 years. These were the kinds of decisions that required all 17 species to come together. Now they gathered again, filling the great chamber until there was barely room to move. Every species sent their senior representatives, their top scientists, their military commanders, and their diplomats. Observers packed the viewing galleries. Watching history unfold before their eyes, Counselor Methy presided over the session, her ancient voice carrying across the vast space without any need for amplification. She had lived for 3,000 years and had seen empires rise and fall, but even she felt the weight of this moment. "We are gathered to consider the most important decision in the history of this council," she announced. "The species known as humanity has demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding. They have asked for formal recognition and integration into galactic society. The ban that has governed their existence for 3 of their centuries must now be reconsidered." The debate began immediately and did not stop for 2 weeks. The Krathani argued for military action. Commander Greth, their senior war leader, stood before the assembly with his chest swelling with confidence. "They are 60 ships," he declared. "We command 10,000. Their population is 14 billion. The combined peoples of the council number in the trillions. End this threat now, before they become something we cannot control." But the Valorians counseled caution. Christos, the scientist who had helped build the barrier, presented his analysis with shaking hands. "We assumed they could not breach the barrier. We were wrong. We assumed they would destroy themselves. We were wrong. We assumed they could not develop fold space travel on their own. We were wrong. Every assumption we have made about humanity has proven false. How many more assumptions are we willing to risk?" The Sylphan offered a compromise. Strix, who had faced the humans directly at the meeting, proposed a middle path. "Give them their own space," she suggested. "A sector far from council territory where they can develop in isolation. We will watch them more carefully this time. We will learn what they truly are before we decide their fate." Other species offered their own opinions. Some wanted peace. Others wanted war. Some feared humanity. Others were curious about them. The chamber rang with arguments and counter-arguments, proposals and rejections, hopes and fears all tangled together. Through all of this, the human delegation waited aboard the horizon, monitoring the proceedings through communication channels they were not supposed to have access to. "They have been arguing for 12 days, Katie Morrison reported, her eyes tired from watching the endless feeds. "The elder races cannot agree on anything. The Krathani want to destroy us. The Valorians want to study us. The Sylphine want to push us somewhere far away and forget about us." Captain Samuel Price nodded slowly. "What about the other species? The ones who are not elder races?" Katie pulled up different feeds, showing smaller delegations from species whose names were barely known outside their own systems. "They are mostly quiet. They follow the lead of the elder races. That is how the council works. The big species make decisions, and the small species go along with them." Diana Shaw crossed her arms, studying the images of the various representatives. "But they must have opinions of their own. They must think something about all of this. If they do, they are keeping it to themselves," Katie replied. "The council is not a democracy. It is a hierarchy. The elder races earn their position through age and power. Everyone else is just along for the ride." Nathan Cole had been silent for some time, studying historical records rather than the live feeds. Now he looked up with an expression of deep concern. "Captain, I found something troubling. There was another species once called the Volanthi. About 6,000 years ago, they showed signs of rapid development. Not as fast as us, but faster than the council liked."
What happened to them?"
Samuel asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The council decided to intervene directly. They sabotaged Velanthi's scientific institutions. They introduced religious movements that discouraged technological research. They manipulated their economy to create internal conflict and division. Within a few centuries, the Volanthi stopped advancing. They never developed space travel on their own. Today they exist as servants of the Sylphine, doing manual labor in exchange for protection. The room fell silent. The implications were clear. The council had not merely quarantined humanity. They had actively tried to prevent any species from rising to challenge their power. "They are not going to let us join them," Diana said quietly. "Not really. Even if they vote to lift the ban, they will find ways to control us. To slow us down? To turn us into another servant species."
Oh, yeah.
Samuel shook his head. "Perhaps, but there is one difference between us and the Volanthi. We already know the game they are playing. We already know what they did to other species. And we have already proven that their methods do not work on us." He stood and moved to the window. Looking out at the stars that had been hidden from humanity for so long, the elder races have ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. They believe that makes them wise. But wisdom is not the same as age. They have been doing things the same way for so long that they have forgotten how to adapt. They have forgotten how to change. They have forgotten that the universe does not care about traditions or hierarchies. Katie's console beeped. Captain, something is happening. The vote is being called. They watched as Counselor Methy called for order in the chamber. The debate had run its course. Every argument had been made, every position stated. Now it was time to decide. The Valorians voted to abstain, uncertain of the correct path forward. The Silthine voted to maintain the ban. The Krathani voted for military action. But then something unexpected happened. The smaller species, the ones who had been silent for 2 weeks, began to cast their votes. One by one, they voted to lift the ban. Species that had been brought into the council, not by choice, but by necessity. Species that had watched the elder races make decisions for them for thousands of years. Species that saw something in humanity they recognized. They saw themselves. They saw what they might have been if they had been given the chance to grow on their own terms. They saw hope. When the final count was announced, the ban was lifted by a margin of 3 votes. Rethy's voice was steady as she made the declaration. But there was something in her eyes that might have been uncertainty. The vote is complete. The ban on human integration is lifted. The species known as humanity is hereby recognized as a probationary member of the Galactic Council. On the horizon, the crew erupted in cheers. 300 years of imprisonment had ended not with war or destruction, but with a vote. Humanity had won its freedom not through force, but through persistence and determination and the simple refusal to stay down. Samuel Price allowed himself one moment of celebration before his mind turned to the challenges ahead. Probationary membership meant they would be watched, tested, and judged at every turn. One mistake could undo everything they had achieved, but humanity had never been afraid of challenges. Challenges were just problems waiting to be solved, and solving problems was what humans did best. Send a message to Earth, he ordered. Tell them the door is finally open. Tell them it is time to show the galaxy what we really are. The message went out at the speed of light, carrying news that would change everything. Humanity was no longer alone. Humanity was no longer trapped. For the first time in 3 centuries, the future was wide open. And somewhere in the great chamber of the council, the elder races looked at each other with expressions of doubt and worry. They had voted to accept humanity, but that did not mean they trusted humanity. They had opened the door, but they had no idea what would come through it. They were about to find out. 5 years passed after the vote. That changed everything. And in those 5 years, the galaxy transformed more than it had in the previous 5,000. Human merchants opened trade routes through regions of space that other species had considered too dangerous to cross. Their fold drives allowed them to skip past hazards that had blocked commerce for centuries. Where Valorian traders needed 6 months to deliver goods between distant systems, human ships made the journey in days. The economy of half the galaxy began to reshape itself around human efficiency. Human scientists worked alongside researchers from every council species, sharing knowledge and learning in return. Dr. Nathan Cole led a team that finally solved the mystery of dark energy manipulation, a problem that had frustrated galactic science for 10,000 years. A Valorian researcher named Christos, the same scientist who had once helped build the barrier around Earth, became Nathan's closest colleague and friend. Human diplomats traveled to worlds where ancient hatreds had burned for longer than humanity had existed. On the border between Krathani space and the territory of their ancestral enemies, the Veltheri, a young woman named Lisa Wong, sat in a small room with representatives from both species. The war between them had lasted for 7,000 years, fueled by grievances that no one alive could even remember properly. Lisa listened to both sides for 3 days. She asked questions that seemed simple but cut to the heart of the matter. She found common ground where everyone else had seen only division. And when she finally proposed a peace agreement, Both sides accepted not because they trusted each other, but because they trusted her. The news spread across the galaxy. Humanity, the species that the Council had once considered too violent to release, had ended a war that no one else could stop. Human soldiers served alongside Council forces when the Outer Rim pirates launched their largest attack in centuries. 3 colony worlds faced destruction, their defenses overwhelmed by enemies who had spent years planning this moment. Admiral Diana Shaw, no longer a lieutenant commander, but the senior military officer of Earth's Joint Fleet, led the response. Her tactics confused the pirates at first. Human ships did not fight the way Council vessels fought. They did not form neat lines or follow predictable patterns. They darted and weaved, appeared and disappeared, struck from directions no one expected. The battle that should have been a massacre became a rout. The pirates fled, their forces broken, their plans ruined. The colony worlds were saved, and the Council military commanders studied recordings of the battle for months afterward, trying to understand how such a small force had achieved such a complete victory. Ambassador Samuel Price, no longer captain of the Horizon but humanity's senior representative to the Council, stood before the Great Chamber once more. The room looked the same as it had 5 years ago, but everything else was different. The fear in the eyes of the Council members had faded, replaced by something more complicated. Respect, perhaps, or wonder, or simply acknowledgement that the universe had changed in ways they were still trying to understand. 5 years ago, Samuel said, his voice carrying across the vast space, you were prepared to destroy us. You feared what we might become, and that fear was not entirely without reason. Humans are dangerous. We adapt quickly. We compete fiercely. We have a capacity for violence that sometimes shocks even ourselves. He paused, looking around at the representatives who had become, if not friends, then at least colleagues and partners. But you forgot to consider something important. The same drive that makes us dangerous also makes us creative. It makes us determined. It makes us absolutely unwilling to accept that any problem is unsolvable. You locked us in a cage for 300 years, and we used that time to become stronger than you ever imagined. Not because we wanted to fight you, but because that is simply what humans do. We grow, we reach. We refuse to be limited. Nathan Cole, now serving as humanity's chief scientific liaison to the Council, stepped forward and transmitted a data package to every representative in the chamber. This is our gift to the Council, he announced. Complete plans for improved fold space engines that can travel 3 times faster than current designs. Specifications for atmospheric processors that can make dead worlds habitable in decades instead of centuries. Medical advances that can extend the healthy lifespan of every species in this chamber by significant amounts. We give these freely, without conditions, as a sign of what humanity can offer when we work together rather than apart. Diana Shaw, her uniform now decorated with medals from a dozen grateful worlds, moved to stand beside Samuel. This is our promise, she said. We will defend this Council and its members as we would defend Earth itself. Not because you have earned our loyalty through the way you treated us, but because we choose to give it. We choose to be partners rather than rivals. We choose to build rather than destroy. That is the difference between us and the species you have dealt with before. We do not follow rules simply because we must. We follow them because we decide they are worth following. Counselor Methie, older now but still sharp and commanding, rose from her seat. She had watched humanity for 5 years and seen things she'd never expected. She had seen humans risk their lives to save strangers. She had seen them work tirelessly on problems that did not affect them directly. She had seen them offer friendship to species that had once voted to destroy them. And what do you want in return, Ambassador? She asked. What is the price for these gifts? Samuel smiled, the same calm and confident expression he had worn when he first faced the Council from the bridge of his ship. We want what every species wants, Counselor. A seat at the table. A voice in the decisions that shape the galaxy. A chance to prove that your fear was never the right response to us. We are not asking to rule. We are not asking to take over. We are just asking to help. The vote that followed was unlike any in Council history. There was no debate, no argument, no division between elder races and junior members. When Rethi called for a decision on granting humanity full membership in the council, every single representative voted yes. Humanity took its seat in the Great Chamber. The first species in 12,000 years to join, not through submission or surrender, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to be denied. In the archives beneath the council chamber, the historians updated their records. The entry for humanity, which had once been filled with warnings and dire predictions, now carried a simple note at the bottom. Status: full member. Assessment: unprecedented. Recommendation: observe with respect. And perhaps, with gratitude, the ban that had been designed to contain humanity forever had lasted exactly 307 years. The Council had believed they were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. Instead, they had given that species exactly what it needed to become something remarkable. 3 centuries of isolation had forced humanity to rely on itself, to push harder, to reach further, to refuse every limit placed upon them. When they finally emerged from their cage, they were not the primitive and violent creatures the Council had expected. They were something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. They were partners. They were friends. They were protectors and scientists and diplomats and builders. They were human, and that, in the end, was more than enough. On Earth, the news of full membership sparked celebrations that lasted for days. People danced in the streets of cities on 6 continents. Children looked up at the stars and knew that the universe was no longer closed to them. The cage was not just open. The cage was gone forever. In his office aboard the Council station, Ambassador Samuel Price looked out at the galaxy he had spent his life trying to reach. He thought about the generations who had come before him, who had struggled and failed and tried again. He thought about everyone who had refused to accept that humanity did not belong among the stars. They had been right. They had always been right. The universe was vast and strange and sometimes frightening. But it was also beautiful and full of wonder.